there's a moment that we don't usually talk about. It's this moment after you've learned something helpful. I don't know, maybe you've had an insight, or maybe you've tried something that actually worked. And I call these mic drop moments in my classes where you're just like, yes, I get it. You might start practicing it, and then you stop doing it. Not because you don't care, it's not because you're lazy, it's certainly not because it didn't help. You just drift. And what happens when you notice that you've drifted, something uncomfortable really kicks in. And this is self-judgment. And you start to ask yourself the question, why can't I stick to anything? I was doing so well, or what's wrong with me? And I want to talk about that moment today, because this is where most people end up becoming a little bit less unhappy. And I want to tell you this straight away. If you're looking at this understanding that happiness is a habit, and if those habits that you know make you happy don't stick for you, it's not because you're bad at habits. It's because you haven't been taught the right model for how habits actually work. You see, what happens is that most people have this idea that consistency means that you never miss, right? You never miss a day, or you never miss a week, or you never miss a month. But I need you to understand something really important. That idea is quietly destroying more progress than almost anything else, because real consistency isn't repetition, it's return. So let me explain what I mean about that. Almost everyone starts a habit with good intentions. Maybe they pause more, they do their gratitude practices, they do their meditation practice, they're kinder to themselves. Maybe you have negative loops going around in your head and you interrupt a few of them and you feel a bit better. And then life happens and you get busy and you get tired and you forget. And then you react. Then you slip back into old patterns. And instead of simply returning to the new habit that you're working on, you interpret that slip as a failure. Now that interpretation is the problem, not the slip. You see, most people don't abandon habits because they don't work. They abandon them because they think they've broken them. But habits aren't broken by missing days. They're broken by believing that missing days means that you should stop. And that belief is what we need to change. So let me tell you about something I see again and again. Like someone learns a simple habit. Maybe they learn pausing, noticing, creating space, and they practice it for a few days, sometimes even a week. And then one day they snap at someone, or they get caught in a mental spiral, or they spend the whole day in reaction mode. And at the end of the week, they think, whoa, there it goes. And without realizing it, they quit. Not consciously, they stop returning. This often happens, when we get this idea about eating better. This is an easy one for us to all relate to. And we start the process of eating better and we're doing really well. Oh, we make this, commitment for the new year. I'm not going to eat sugar for the whole year. And then we slip up and then the whole system collapses because we made one mistake. So what's happening there isn't a lack of discipline. It's a loss of emotional safety. This is so important to understand. The habit becomes something that you feel judged by. Really think about that. You lose emotional safety because the habit becomes something you feel judged by. And anything that feels judging is hard to come back to. So this is where we need to reframe what habits and what our happiness habits are actually all about. A happiness habit is not something you perform. It's something you return to. And that difference matters more than you might think. Think about this. Think about brushing your teeth. So if you miss a night of brushing your teeth, you don't decide all of a sudden that you've failed at oral hygiene forever. You just brush them the next morning. There's no drama. There's no self-attack. You don't have an identity crisis. You just return to the habit. But what I see is that with emotional habits, people do the opposite. So they miss one day and then they make a decision about themselves. I can't stick to things, or I'm inconsistent, or I always fall off. And those thoughts hurt more than the missed habit ever could. So here's the habit I want to focus on today, the return habit. Not doing it perfectly, not doing it every day, not staying on track forever. Returning back to your habit once you notice you've drifted. That's it. This is the habit that makes all other habits sustainable. Without it, everything else collapses under pressure. And with it, nothing's ever truly lost. I talk to so many people who say a similar thing. They say, I always do really well for a bit and then I ruin it. And when we look closer, they weren't ruining anything. They were having normal human fluctuations. Good days, hard days, reactive days, tired days. And then they interpreted those days as evidence that they shouldn't bother continuing. Right? I know that you know this. So once we change one thing, we remove the idea of staying consistent and we replace it with one question. Can you return once? That's it. Not all day, not forever, just once. And if you notice you've been reactive all morning, can you return for one pause in the afternoon? Or if you catch yourself spiraling, can you return for one breath? Or if you snap at someone, can you return with one moment of self-kindness instead of self-attack? And if you do that, something's going to shift. You're going to stop quitting. Not because you're suddenly more disciplined, but because the habit feels safe again. This is the part that most people miss. So happiness habits don't stick through pressure. They stick through safety. Your nervous system has to feel like it's allowed to wobble and not be punished. Otherwise, it's going to avoid the habit altogether. This is why all or nothing thinking is so destructive here. I didn't do it today, so I'll start again Monday. Or I've already ruined the day. Or I'll try again when things are calmer. So those thoughts delay the return, and delay is where our habits quietly die. So the return habit says something very different. It says, I drifted and I'm back. No apology, no explanation, no restart date, just returning. And that return might last 10 seconds. It still counts. Because our habits aren't built by duration. They're built by repetition of coming back. So this is especially important if you're someone who's sensitive, who's anxious, who's easily overwhelmed. Your system doesn't need more demands. It needs reassurance. Reassurance that it's safe to try again. So let's make this really practical. Imagine you've been practicing pausing before reacting. And then one day you don't pause at all. You react to everything. So you notice at night the old pattern is self-criticism. I knew I wouldn't keep this up, or I always fall back. So the return habit sounds like this. Okay, I drifted today. And then one pause. Maybe before bed. Maybe before replying to a message. Maybe before judging yourself. And that one return keeps the habit alive. It keeps the relationship intact. And relationship is everything here. Your relationship with yourself, your relationship with the practice, your relationship with change. This is why I don't believe in streaks for emotional habits. Streaks work for some things, but they don't work for your nervous system. They turn care into pressure, and pressure eventually always creates avoidance. Return creates resilience. So this is why people who are naturally consistent aren't actually more disciplined. They're more forgiving. They don't make missing mean anything. So they keep going. That's the skill. Not perfection, return. So if you take nothing else from this, take this. You don't fail a habit by drifting, you fail it by not returning. And returning once is always enough to begin again. So if you're curious about your own patterns, I really encourage you to come and do my happiness quiz. Come to moniquerhodes.com, do my happiness quiz. And let me leave you with this. Happiness isn't built by doing everything right. It's built by coming back gently, honestly, imperfectly, again and again. That's the habit that holds everything together. And that's what we'll keep building here. As always, be kind, take care, go gently in the world.